Chapter 3. Isabel nursed the mug of tea in front of her, trying to clear the fog that clouded her mind. 24 hours ago she had been eating breakfast across the table from her father, mindful of every hair on her head and the place that it belonged. Now she was sitting across the table from two criminals in what she could only describe as an apartment one step away from foreclosure. And yet Isabel couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief as she brushed her loosely swooping bangs away from her face, avoiding the gaze of the beautiful stranger in front of her. "Greenwich, huh?" Anton broke the tense silence as nonchalantly as they could manage. "Isabel Greenwich," Isabel corrected politely, as she had 100 times before. She never could stand for being addressed as coldly. "Isabel," Katya cooed, softening the thick air of anxiety coating the room. "We just want to know what happened, what your plan is next, you know?" Isabel tried to fight the frown nagging on the edge of her mouth. Katya noticed the rage growing just behind Isabel's face and scooted her chair a hair closer. "The dress," Katya motioned to the makeshift washer where Katya had haphazardly attempted to scrub off the dirt and grime. "Where were you going?" Isabel trailed off, her mind replaying the night over and over again. Gathering herself with a deep inhale, she straightened her spine. "It was my wedding night." "Well, I don't think I've ever seen a more beautiful bride," Isabel's mother asked cooed as she began affixing the delicate pearl necklace around her daughter's neck. "I have, but only in pictures." Isabel smiled brightly at her mother, and running her fingers along the lace trim of her belt as she had imagined her mother had done in the very same dress on her wedding day. Wedding day. Isabel could hardly believe it. It seemed like only yesterday she had magazine after magazine splayed out on her bedroom floor, mapping exactly where her honorable stuffed animals would sit. She giggled at the thought. She had been so young when she began preparing for this day. Since the day she was born, Isabel was always set up to be the bride. After all, many of her family's favorite traditions were celebrated solely because of marriages. And when the Gregory Greenwich had a child, well, everyone knew that it was going to be the party of a century. A party so great, her father hoped, that it could bridge warring families together. Isabel was never sure that she believed that. Sure, she thought they could host a pretty killer party, but she doubted that anything could end the feud between the Greenwich family and the Henrik family. It never really interested Isabel why the feud was started, or why it had gone on so long. It never really concerned her. After all, the Greenwich Empire was never promised to her. She was the youngest of the family, with 3 older brothers. Her childhood was spent among her brothers, wrestling and fighting, sneaking out at night to watch the drift races, and seeing what kind of trouble they could get away with. That was until her father had decided that there was quite enough games. Her brothers needed to focus on the future of the family, he had said, and so did she. For her brothers, that meant being tutored in business classes and learning how to navigate the world of elites. For her, it meant becoming the model wife, one that the Henrik family couldn't refuse. Isabel tried not to let a solemn frown reach her face at the thought. Sure, she was happy to finally have a reason for all of her wedding planning, to finally need to break out the pristine designer stilettos that sat under her bed for so long, but still, something felt wrong somehow. Jeremiah Henrik was a lovely man, she had heard. Poised, passionate, and professional. Still, Isabel couldn't help but wonder what she would be like to be married to a man she'd hardly even met. Sure, it was tradition in her family, but just because something was tradition... Isabel fought against the knot forming in her stomach. She smoothed out the waist of her dress, shaking herself back into reality. She was here now. Nothing anyone could do about it. "So," she cleared her throat. "Mom, what did you say about the brioche rolls for dinner? Did they not do the egg wash the way I like?" She changed the subject, adjusting her hair. She was sure that the lady responsible for her hair was going to have a cow when she saw the pins were already worming their way out of her thick, uncooperative hair. She breathed a sigh of relief, remembering that her mother had ushered all of Team Bride, makeup and hair team, out of the room to give them a quiet moment alone. Isabel was sure that the team would be buzzing at the door, waiting to ambush her as soon as she stepped out. "Mom?" She stared quizzically at her mother's reflection in the massive mirror in front of them, her mother's gaze fixed somewhere far in the distance. "Mom?" she repeated more urgently, trying to snap her mother back to the present. "Sorry," Astley breathed, shaking her head slightly and turning to look at the clasp of the necklace in her hands. "Everything okay?" Isabel tried to turn to meet her mother, but was pushed back into place by Astley's gentle hand. "Everything's fine, dear," Astley clicked and finished pinning the necklace into place. "There," she smiled at Isabel through the mirror, but Isabel didn't feel the usual warmth. "The most beautiful bride I've ever seen." Mom, Isabel softened but persisted, turning to face her mother. What's wrong? Isabel watched her mother swallow hard, clearly trying to fight back a sudden spring of tears. Isa, you know I've always tried to do right by you. Ashley brushed a gentle hand on Isabel's cheek. Isabel leaned into the warm and familiar touch. Of course, Mom. Isabel tried to pull her mother into a tight hug, but was met with resistance from her mother's sturdy stance. Isa, I need you to listen to me. Ashley pulled Isabel's face closer to her own, making sure her gaze was focused and clear. You need to run. Run and don't look back. Do you hear me? Isabel's stomach dropped through the floor. Mom, what the hell are you talking about? She struggled to writhe away from her mother's tight grasp, which was now leading her to the door. Run faster than you ever have before, Ashley pushed, now fully hysterical and shoving her daughter to the exit. Mom, Isabel grunted as she attempted to pry her mother's bony fingers away from her arm. I don't understand. Why are you doing this? The ritual, Ashley breathed near silently, stopping in her tracks suddenly. Isabel managed to break free as her mother stood deadly still, her gaze fixated on the hallway. Her head snapped towards her daughter, eyes red and stinging with tears, face contorted into a frozen, ancient pain. Isa, I'm so sorry I couldn't save you. She sobbed silently as the door swung open with a loud thud. It was my wedding night. I planned the day down to the minute for years. I was betrothed to a man that I never really met. I left him at the altar. The end. Isabel let out all in one breath, almost as if the words were carving a hole in her chest. Because you barely knew him, or? Katya pushed, trying to ignore the sideways glances from Anton across the table. Listen, Isabel breathed to steady herself. There's more to it, okay? This ritual, this fucking sick, sadistic fucking ritual. She shook her head, trying to clear the thoughts away. I'm not ready to talk about it. You know, not yet. Just trust that I want the whole fucking mafia torched and burned. Anton and Katya shared a stunned silence, then a knowing glance. Okay, Anton let out a deep sigh. You want to be trusted? Trust is earned. They slid a pager across the table, the small device skittering to a stop just short of Isabella. You know what this is? Pager. I'm not stupid, Isabel huffed and crossed her arms. Good, then you know how to use it. Katya shrugged and began clearing away the leftover coffee mugs from earlier. Anton sends you a number. You call that number for instructions. You make a drop, you get out. Easy peasy. She nonchalantly dumped the dishes into the sink. I'm sorry, what? You want me to make a drug drop? Isabel asked incredulously, throwing out her arms to the side and sending a mug clattering into a pile of shards. Right, and get me a new favorite mug. Katya shied and grabbed the broom. I'm sorry, she turned a genuine apology to Katya that was quickly turned hostile. No, I'm not sorry that you want me to make a drug deal? Me? What, you're afraid you're going to get bitten by some drugs? Anton chuckled, reclining in their chair and propping their feet on the table. You're telling me that you didn't have drugs in that little White Castle boarding school they probably shipped you off to? Because I can personally guarantee you that you're incorrect. No, it's just... Isabel stiffened, trying to organize her thoughts. Why did she have such a big problem with this after all? Anton was right. It's not like she hadn't ever taken drugs. Something about being the one selling them, distributing them, she wasn't sure. Maybe it was just beneath her, she thought. I mean, don't you think I'd get recognized immediately? There's Greenwich cronies everywhere. If you're stupid, then yeah, Anton shrugged. Just don't be stupid. A tight frown twisted itself on Isabel's face. She couldn't get out of this without looking bad some way or another. It's not like you're going to get a ride along, Anton laughed, lighting up a cigarette. Why not? Katya asked quietly as she dumped the remains of her mugs into the trash. Anton nearly choked on their cigarette. I mean, I have nothing better to do today. Your funeral, Anton huffed, shaking their head. Just keep me out of it. Oh, you want to deliver my eulogy? Katya mocked, pulling on her jacket. Come on, Your Highness, I'm driving. When don't you drive? Anton shot back, and Katya offered a middle finger as she stepped out the door. Isabel took a deep breath. She was really doing this. She was really going to go do a drug deal, or whatever it's called. She would probably have to ask the lingo later.